We are calling this episode the Ray Poteet Tribute. Holly and I sit down to discuss the many lessons we learned from Ray Poteet. We'll also discuss why we believe he pushed infinite banking farther than anyone else. And we wanted to give you a sneak peek on how we feel that will impact the generations to come. She's Holly. She helps people find financial freedom.
He's Nate. He makes sense out of money. This is Dollars and Nonsense. If you follow the herd, you will be slaughtered.
Well, Holly, we've been pushing this episode off a little bit, or at least I don't know about you, but It's been on something that I wanted to do, and if I did it too soon, I feel like it would be too emotional to do it, but I wanted to do it, and hopefully we can get through it.
Yes.
Maybe take a lighter approach to it, but for those of you who don't know, Ray Poteet, our mentor, was Holly's father and was my grandfather-in-law. I married his oldest granddaughter. He was not only family, but he was the founder of Living Wealth. He was our mentor in this movement, and he was truly a pioneer in the world of banking, and he just devoted his life to it. He was so passionate about the power of this banking concept when you take it to the fullest. We believe he took it to the fullest.
Yes.
But we also wanted just to spend some time essentially unscripted here to talk about Ray, the things we learned from Ray, and we also wanted to, as I said, offer like a little bit of a sneak peek into, well, what is a life inside of infinite banking for 22 years? What does that actually look like? What was Ray's legacy really like? So we'll dive into that too. But Holly, let's kick it off. What did we learn from Ray?
I think first and foremost, we want to talk a little bit just about the business, but I think one of the things that you learn is he was absolutely 100% into banking, and not just IBC, but Ray was about doing it, using it, not just buying this policy and using it, and how does it affect your lives, and constantly pushing that envelope. How quick can I get there? What can I use it for? And how can I use it for? And I think that for a lot of us, I don't have a business degree at all. Nate, you didn't. I grew up in the household of him having a phenomenal business and being a brilliant individual, and yet I didn't actually understand or learn or know the concepts until I actually took the time to step back and learn it from him and be mentored by him and educated by him. And so I think the business side of that is you don't need a business degree to do it, but in business, you want to be using even your banking system. Whether it be in your personal life or in business, you always want to be using that. And that you can learn, whether you have a degree or not, you can learn and take it to that next level just like he did. And you can fire clients too. I'm just going to be honest. My dad, there was individuals he did not want to work with because if they weren't using it, he didn't want to work with them. He wanted to work with individuals that were actively participating in their system versus I have a policy and I've never done anything with it. Like he said, cream rises to the top. He always wanted to work with the cream, those that rose to the top to grow and learn and educate and implement. And he didn't want to work, as he called it, I don't want to work with the drudge down below. Just want to work with the cream at the top. So
yeah, he and I learned so much about business. That's one of the things we wanted to mention. Growing up, the son of a school teacher and a pastor, we weren't, business was far away from anything that I knew at the time. There was, and as you brought up, even for yourself, Holly, having Ray be your dad, he was phenomenal at business and was entrepreneur to the core to the day that he passed away, but it didn't just rub off automatically. And it wasn't until he invited you into the business. Yeah. And he said, I'm going to pour into you. And so that's one thing I learned from Ray about my own life is that I need to be proactive in my own kids' lives about business. But most of what I learned about business was from Ray. And one of the things you mentioned that we have essentially a philosophy here at Living Wealth that was passed down from Ray, which I think protects us. It's like an identity. It protects us. We are not out there to work with everybody. We're not out there to send out the gimmicky marketing messages that try to get in front of every single person in the world and try to grab people in and sell it to anybody that will want to be in. We all follow his motto, which is cream rises to the top without any help. You don't need to churn milk into cream. Just go ahead and work with the cream. The people who want to work with us, who align with us, are the ones who will rise to the top. And as you said, sometimes that means that the clients who are not really cream are the ones who are not engaged at all. Yeah. That's essentially the issue. They're not engaged. They don't listen to the podcast. They don't spend time with us. They don't think about it. They think about it for 1 hour a year whenever they meet with us or something. And you would say those are the clients that are no longer cream. They just decided they weren't going to be engaged with this. But a lot of business lessons, we learned one of them that you could kind of tie into the business would be the idea of never retiring.
Liar. No.
Never retire. This was a big deal to Ray. It was a big deal to his mentor, Nelson Nash, that created Infinite Banking. It's a big deal to another one of our mentors, Rabbi Daniel Lappin, who I'm going to have as a guest on the show here coming up soon as well. This idea of never retiring. Ray was 76. Is that correct?
Yes.
The day that he passed away, 70. Yep. He passed away on his birthday, 76 years. And he could have retired a long time ago. like financially, things were okay. But his hobby, some people like to go golf, some people like to travel, his hobby was banking. Like this was not just a business to him, it was a hobby. It was like, I love this. It's a game. He's playing a game. And he loved to play the banking game, and he loved to teach people the banking game. And that's what it was to him. It was so fun for him. So I've learned from Ray that if you get your eyes off of retirement, your life will just be more fulfilling. In other words, there will come a day whenever you can't work anymore. And we all understand that. I mean, there likely will be a day where your body will deteriorate, mind will deteriorate, you may not be able to work anymore. You should prepare for that event. You should build wealth. We've said this many times on the show. But I think money is using your resources can be like a game. It can be fun. Building wealth can be a fun thing, making wise decisions. And so if you take your mind off of retirement and onto the game of money, you can actually have fun doing it right now. You can have fun doing it later. You can have fun doing it the entire time. And that's one of the big things I learned from him. Have fun doing this in your life. Have fun working. Have fun. Enjoy the people you run into. Even the things you don't like about your career. Because there's going to be things you don't like. There's things I don't like. I deal with people that, with situations I wish I didn't have to deal with. We all deal with stuff. But I'm saying, have fun doing it. Enjoy this life and make a hobby out of, have your money be a part of your hobbies. Like, just have fun with it. It's not about making a ton of money. It's not about getting rich. It's just about having fun with money. Do things what I believe now because of Ray is that if people would focus on using their money to invest in things that they enjoy investing in, like they're having fun doing it, it's going to produce more success than all the people out there who just buy into the 401k, IRA, retirement program mentality, set money aside. It's not exciting. It's not fun. And it's all based on storing up a nest egg to one day retire. And I learned from Ray and then from even the other clients. I've learned so much, but it all started with Ray. Just this idea that, hey, investing and business should be fun.
And Nate, I think it's not just that. He didn't just invest in the business. He invested in people. Mm-hmm. So the other part of that was the teaching that he was still working the day he passed. He loved it. And he joked that he was retired because people retired do what they love, and he was doing what he loved. And so I think that other side of it is that investing in people, the time that they were the most important thing to him at that point in time. If he was talking to you, you were what was important. And so even bringing that into the business, that it's personal, that it's the start of a long relationship. It's not something short-term, it's long-term. I think that's what it ties into, Nate, is a long-term mentality. That you're not just looking for what's happening today and what I'm spending today, but literally long-term, passing that on generationally, what it looks like. And that's one of the legacies he left, and even with the business side of it, is that they're not just clients, they're individuals that we want to have and we have relationship with, that we take the time to have relationship with, that it's not just a checkbox that I did that meeting today. And I think that's really important. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's not transaction. I noticed so much in the world of business is that marketing and sales is all about producing transactions, and you have all these people working on funnels and sales strategies, and you look on YouTube in the world of infinite banking, and there's all this noise out there trying to get clickbaity titles and clickbaity videos, try to get as many people in to do a transaction, and they will say they're in the relationship business, but it's more of a transaction. They're like they treat it like a commodity that you're selling. And that's one thing that our brand, if you talk about the brand of Living Wealth that Ray fathered, that we carry forward and steward, it's a brand that it's saying we really want people to work with us who want a relationship with us, and we also want to reciprocate. Like, we want to be in relationship with you if you want to be in relationship with us, and it's going to be together. So whenever people come work with our team, whether it's me, whether it's Holly, whether it's some of the other advisors we have, that's what we're doing. We're not in it for high volume of transactions. Instead of doing high volume, we're going for depth with people. It's my goal with everyone who becomes a client of mine to learn to think inside of infinite banking. And to do that, you have to have a consultant-style relationship, not a transaction-style relationship. So you're right. I mean, that was a huge deal. He lived for these relationships. Who were his best friends? Clients. You know, all of his best, he would go visit his clients like someone would go visit a friend because he was all about relationships. I learned so much. I'll just be transparent. That wasn't me to start, in the business. It was more like a transactional thing. And it just took like a marinating time with Ray to realize, no, the relationships is the business. It makes your life better to have these key relationships. That was such a big deal.
Yeah, and I think that's important in understanding, like, when you spend time and it's relational, it's quality time, it's mentoring, it's discussing, it's being involved with them at that point. And so that's one of the legacies he left, and that's one of the things the business is going to continue, is the relational aspect of seeing clients, of talking to them, of spending time with them. I can remember people being like, he just talked to me for like 2.5 hours. It wouldn't have mattered at all if it was 3 hours or an hour, but while you needed to talk and what you needed him for was what he was going to do. And that's what we really hope to continue on.
I know. I mean, so obviously since he's passed away back in March, Holly, you and I both have met with a lot of his clients and, taking care of them, picking up where he left off, of course. It's almost every single one of them says the thing they admired most about Ray was that he would just spend any amount of time with them and help them with anything. It wasn't just even banking, talking them through difficult situations that were just life situations. He became like a trusted advisor. It wasn't just a banking thing anymore. It was a mentor relationship. And we learned how to do that from him. We tried to be the same way for our clients as well. That's the brand. That's the Living Wealth brand. That's what he created. That's what we need to be known for continually. That's what he wanted to do. So what we've done, we learned business. We learned never retire. Life is better if you just get retirement out of your mindset.
Right. Yeah.
It really is. It is. It's just get it out. Now go ahead and build wealth. Go ahead and have fun investing. Go ahead and do the things that are wise with money. Just get the idea of retirement out of your mindset. You'll have more fun. Right now, you have more fun later. It's just going to be a better life. The other thing I learned from him that as a young guy was hard to really grasp was just how to think generationally.
Yes.
Some people I think is more natural than others. It wasn't as natural to me per se to think generationally. The decisions I make now at, in my 30s, they will impact my life, but my decisions now can impact generations. And that was one thing that was always on Ray's mentality. When he brought you into the business, when he brought me into the business, he was thinking, what is my family's life going to look like after I pass? And so he was always thinking generationally. It also helps him become more generous, which we're going to talk about that. Yeah. We can kind of combine these two. We'd said, let's talk about him thinking generationally and his generosity, but it's like, it allowed him to not focus on himself. And as soon as you can get over yourself, you can be a way more generous person when it's not all about you anymore, when it's about your kids and their kids and their kids. And then you're not sitting here thinking, what can I do for me? And then produces more fulfillment. It produces a better life. In other words, it's almost like replacing the idea of retirement with legacy and generational wealth. You replace those ideas and suddenly your life gets better, just by a perspective change. And suddenly, now it's not all about me. And as soon as you get it off of me, retirement's all about me, by the way. I want to quit working. I want to do this. I want to do that. It's very me centric. And I'm not trying to be judgmental to anybody. I'm just merely saying, this is what I learned from Ray, and I'm going to tell you what I learned from Ray. I mean, you take it how you want to take it. I'm just merely saying this is what he thought. He thought there were so many times where he would mention to me things like that, where he would correct himself when he started thinking all about him and what's best for him, and he would change it to what's best for the people around him. And it even extended to the staff of Living Wealth, the team here. It wasn't even just family. It was what's best for the team, what's best for the agents we have, what's best for. He was just so generous with that, and it's because he got his mind on legacy and generational aspects and less on, I got to get as much as I can because I got to retire soon, type of mentality.
Well, and I think generationally, we often don't think about it. I'm just going to say, my dad wasn't just thinking about me as his daughter. He was thinking about his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren, those legacies, having something to pass generationally, and acknowledging that the decisions we make today do affect our future. And that because they affect our future, you have to start thinking that way. You can't just think about here and now today, but how am I going to leave that legacy? And the giving, I mean, Nate, you and I can say, I don't know anybody that if they didn't ask my dad to give or contribute to something, he wouldn't go and try and he would go and find the money to be able to give or to donate. Or you say you can't outgive a giver. I don't know anybody that could have outgiven him and my mom. Like, their generosity beyond the family and even people they knew, to opening up their homes, to providing plane tickets to people he didn't even know, missionaries that needed to get somewhere. Oh, I've got miles, I'll get your ticket. Like, because it was so non-self-focused, it was able to open up an entire different aspect of what it truly means to give and how to give and to be able to give because of what you've established today that it'll allow you to give in the future.
The conventional financial system makes the bank rich using your money and pays you next to nothing in return. At Living Wealth, we believe in challenging the status quo. After all, most of those conventional tools only seem to make someone else rich. Let us show you how to become your own bank. Visit livingwealth.com/bank on yourself. You'll receive instant access to what we call the beginner's course. This free, in-depth, easy-to-follow course teaches people how to create and profit from infinite banking. We not only discuss the philosophy and principles behind infinite banking, but also offer real-life examples to demonstrate how it works. Even participants experienced with infinite banking often tell us how they learned a ton too. It's worthwhile regardless of your experience level. Stop letting the banks and Wall Street dictate your financial future. Again, that's livingwealth.com/bank on yourself to gain access to the free course today. Now back to Nate and Holly.
He was the most generous person I think I've ever met in a lot of ways. Even at his memorial, his celebration of life, when I mentioned that, the idea that it wasn't just generous with money, but it was, we've already brought this up, generous with time. He would spend as much time with anyone in the world, and when he was with you, you and him were the only thing that mattered. It was just completely selfless in that. He never cared, was never looking at his watch. He would be okay to run late to the next meeting. He would do what he needed to do with that person and pour into them. I mean, there were occasionally times where here at the office, he'd be meeting in person with somebody. There would be some tears flowing in the meeting. It was like they were so far away from talking about finances now that he's just ministering to them, praying with them, comforting them, encouraging them. And you're like, wow, Ray, what all we're saying is these things build on each other. It's like they're all kind of connected. If it was all about retiring and storing up as much money as you possibly can so you can retire one day, I don't think you would have gotten Ray Poteet. And I think it would have been different. I think you would agree, Holly, even from seeing him and his interactions as a younger person, before IBC came along, before he started to change some of these perspectives, it would have been a little bit more transactional. It would have been a little bit more...
It was very transactional.
Yeah, and it was something that he learned. So by the time I met him in his 60s, that was fully embedded now. That he was saying, hey, life, I'm going to pour into everybody I meet. And he saw this as a ministry. I'm going to minister to people financially. And if I'm going to talk about finances, but we'll talk about everything else because I'm here to minister to people in all these meetings. And you learn that. It hits you. Something I've got to grow in. But he was extremely generous. That I think it's easier to be generous when you get out of the self mentality, which also can mean get out of the quote unquote retirement mentality. It's hard to be generous when your entire goal financially is to store up a lot of money so that you can consume it doing pleasurable things whenever you want. I think that is going to be a situation where you can achieve that. I'm just saying, don't let that be the definition of success for you. Let that be an offshoot of success for you. Like, hey, I was able to retire and live an amazing lifestyle afterwards. Be like, hey, I was successful because of that. That's what I think retirement does. And some of these things fall into play when Ray got rid of that. Because he would tell me that back when he got started in the 70s, that he was thinking retirement. Of course, like everybody, he was thinking along these lines. And at some point, it switched. I think it had a lot to do with infinite banking. I think it had a lot to do with Nelson Nash and some of his mentors. And I think it had a lot to do with just spending time with the Lord. I think it had a lot to do with just who he became, towards the end. In the last 20 years of his life were the sweetest years. He felt like infinite banking was what he was supposed to do. Mm-hmm. That's what he was supposed to do. Like, it was like, I'm here to do this. And he was very, very good at it. Yeah, another thing.
Nate,
oh, Holly, do you want to say something?
I'm going to tie in with that is as much as Nate is saying like learning, growing, one big philosophy, education is expensive.
That's his favorite thing to say.
When you're being educated on what, and my dad would say expensive, it's the time you're taking to learn, to grow, to listen to podcasts, to be mentored. It can be money that you're spending to learn something or to educate yourself or to do that or to come to a webinar. But I think in that, it was expensive because you never stop learning. That's the other thing that was so vital when you get retirement kind of out of your brain, I think. The amount of time he spent learning or listening to audiobooks or recordings or podcasts or not just about infinite banking, what is retirement? Should you retire? All those things that he spent time doing it because it was an investment in his life to be a better person for the rest of the family and his company and stuff. So it was spending the money, the expense to educate yourself. And I think a lot of us, we would balk at spending $20 on the infinite banking book. And my dad would never, ever give his book away. Ever.
I don't think there was ever a time where something cost too much if it was something he could learn. Like that.
There's not a price
Yeah, there's just
tag
if I can learn something from this, I'm going to spend the money, and that was what it was.
Yeah, it goes to spending the money to, and I'm going to say this, like taking a look at how do we operate our business in a way that's Christ-centered, but that we are invested in our employees, that we are having authentic relationship that's not just work, that you can take an hour of the day or a week or more to spend with that individual and find out how they're doing. And that's something he challenged us on. I'm going to be honest, Kingdom at Work, but I didn't want to go. I did not want to go. My dad, no, we're going. And the way it changed, it was an expense. Okay. It was an expense that we did, but I think it transformed our company and the way we view our staff. And so just because there's a dollar sign on there, if you can learn from it and grow, and it is going to impact and change your life, it's also going to change your kids' lives and your future lives, the legacy, the generational thinking of that. How do I actually have authentic relationship that passed down, not just to my kids and my grandkids, but far after that? And so I think that education's expensive, period, right? But is it worth it? And I'm going to tack on with that. You never stop learning. My dad never had the arrival syndrome that He had learned everything there was to know about infinite banking. It was always, what else can I learn? What can I grow from? Even your 4 stages, Nate. When he passed, he was actively looking at those, breaking those down. How can I implement them? How have I done this? What are real life examples? Just to make it more relational, really, with the individuals he would be meeting with and stuff. How do I tangibly make this relatable? What can I take from this and learn from it?
I mean, I don't know too many 76-year-olds who were learning at the speed that he was. It was remarkable. Everything was about education in his mind. And he would always bring this up too. Everyone learns more when they lose money than when they make money. And it's just a kind of a truth in life. So he was never afraid to lose money, never afraid to do something, because he was like, hey, if it doesn't work, then I'll have learned a lot through the process. If it does work, great, because he thoroughly believed and was a living testament. You learn more whenever you lose money than when you make money. And I remember he would always tell a story of driving in his car one time, and he said the Holy Spirit kind of showed up in the car and was convicting us some things, and he's sitting here just crying, and he asked God, are you ever going to teach me a lesson without getting into my pocketbook? And God said, you wouldn't listen if I didn't. And that was truly a Ray thing too. Like that was part of the education expensive. He just knew, and this kind of goes into another thing I learned, which is really just don't be afraid to move forward. He was never afraid to try something. Let's try it. If we spend some money and it fails, so be it. Never be afraid to go do something, because you'll learn a lot as you're doing it that you can bring into the next area of your life. And so you'll learn more through failures than you will through successes in almost every instance. So the people who are too afraid to ever fail, ever do anything new, ever try something new, those are the people who just don't learn a lot. You look at the entrepreneurs that are very successful, a lot of times they have failed many, many times on their way to finally figuring out what works. And he would always say you couldn't give somebody enough money to teach you what you learned losing all that money. That idea and concept that I'm working on still and presented a couple months ago. He went to, it wasn't Mexico, it was Hawaii, excuse me. And partly he was there to learn the ins and outs of that and to expand on it. He wanted to just get away from everything and sit down and figure out, okay, what is Nate's concept here, and on top of that, is there anything I can add to it to add more clarity, add more relationships? How can we take this thing forward? He was always thinking of new ideas.
Okay. So do you want to talk about legacy?
Yeah, I don't know how much detail we want to get into, just for privacy reasons, but I think that the audience and the world at large, I'm sure they would be the most interested of everything we've said. What does a life like Ray Poteet, having practiced IBC since 2001, so for 22 years when he passed away, what was the end result of that? I don't know where you want to go with that. Some of it's still kind of in the air. The estate's kind of still getting settled and things are moving around. There's still some moving parts, but I thought it would be good to see, hey, this thing works. Yeah. Ray Poteet practiced what he preached. So anyway, let's go ahead and dive into that. I didn't know if you had something you want to start off with or not.
I'm just going to say, and I've said it, he truly lived his life for everybody else but himself.
He did.
He worked as hard as he did in the relationships he did and built, because he wanted to know that without a doubt, nobody would need anything.
Yeah, he did. And some people don't know this too, by the way. So with Ray, he was diagnosed with leukemia in 2001. And so because of the leukemia, he had been uninsurable for the last 22 years of his life, from 2001 to 2023. He was not able to buy any additional policies on his own life. So when he passed, I think the final number, and I could be wrong, I think it was right around 68 policies is what Ray owned, 68 policies. Some people ask, well, why would someone need 68? Well, I mean, whenever you are taking this thing to the extreme, you're always tweaking. This is something I'm on to lately as well, that Ray, of course, lived it out, is I think too many people get complacent in life, in every area of life, and especially with banking. They have their policies, they're putting some money in, and they don't ever expand the system because they're not even thinking on those lines. Ray was always expanding the system all the time. But part of the reason it took 68 policies was because he was uninsurable himself.
Yeah.
Because he was uninsurable, he couldn't buy policies on himself. So he had to buy policies on his wife. He had to buy policies on his kids. He had to buy policies on his grandkids. He had to buy policies on his great-grandkids. He had to buy policies on his business partners. He would buy other people's policies if they didn't want them sometimes. And so he accumulated these policies as assets. There were 68 assets. And he would just move money. You know, that's what he felt like he was doing at the end. He was a banker. He was moving money in. He was moving money out. There was always a constant flow of money in and out of this system of 68 policies. Now, some people say, how hard is it hard to manage 68? It's actually not, by the way, given he has Lisa to help him. But the reality is, if it's just a big banking system, all he was doing was moving money in. By the time that he passed away, almost every single policy was pretty mature. You know, there was a whole bunch of really mature ones. I think he told me there was a few, let's say, I wanted to say there was maybe $300,000 or $400,000 of profit being made, maybe even a little bit more, just in the cash value growth in those policies. But the reality is, the majority of the money in those 68 policies, that conglomerate, was working elsewhere, mainly in his finance company, RIP Rip Enterprises. And so there's people listening to this podcast who have loans from Rip, by the way. Plenty of clients borrowed money from his lending company. And so he had, I want to say, maybe a $10 million loan portfolio inside of Rip at the time he passed, all of which was funded from policy. So, and this is one of those things we talked about a while ago about evergreen assets. Like, in other words, that bank, he left a bank. You know, it's a private bank. And so there's this big private bank with all these loans outstanding that are still being brought in. In other words, the bank could still lend money to us. Now, will the bank be lending money out to all sorts of other people now that he's not there to kind of spearhead that? Probably not. But we could do that if we wanted to. You know, we could. This is still fresh. We haven't made every decision we're ever going to make with it. But there's this big banking institution on top of which was all funded by policies, most of which weren't on his life.
Yeah.
Most of which, you know, the big
key.
policies are on Nana. They're on his wife, you know, they're on Amy, not on himself as far as the big policies. But there was still, even on the policies that he owned on himself, there's over $3 million of death benefit that passed that was above and beyond the fact that he'd taken almost all the cash value out in loans from those policies. So all the money was out working in RIP, and there was a $3.5 million check, whatever it is. And it would have been way larger, of course, if he had been insurable for the last 22 years, because a lot of the policies would have been built on him. He probably wouldn't have had 68 if he could have bought some big ones on himself. But because that wasn't an option, he had to kind of piecemeal it together with as many policies as he could all around. And so, you know, leaving a big pool of policies, some of which are on you, some of which are on me, some of which are on all the family that will be passed down to the family, leaving a death benefit, and then on top of that, leaving a large banking business that was set up and financed completely through his policies, of which his wife, of course, will be able to survive. He would always make a joke.
Yes.
And it was a pretty morbid joke, but the joke was he just hoped his wife would look sad at the funeral, which sounds really morbid at this point, but that was what he would say all the time. It was one of his many, many Rayisms, one of his many jokes that, you know, he would.
And Nate, he also would say he always wanted to go first because he was going to have to go dig her up once she passed.
He couldn't survive without her, yeah.
Yeah,
so
basically, you know, and I want to just tie in the fact that a lot of people in my dad's life would say, but you're only leaving Amy this much in the death benefit amount because of the loans he had out. And yet you have to understand that the loaning business in and of itself will far exceed and last way past when he graduated on this earth.
Yeah.
It will probably last through my mom and for generations to come. It was a business he established that literally has a loan portfolio, private loans that keep money coming in every single month, not just for this year or for 5 years. There are loans in there that will last 10, 15, 20 years. There's some that'll be paid off, and then there's more money to loan out again. So in the reality, by only leaving her $3 million, and I say only, he actually calculated out what his loan portfolio could do is in excess of, like Nate said, it's way more than the 10 million he has loaned out. Okay?
Yeah, there's the 10 million, and then it's all earning interest and
all
so
the
forth
interest.
on the loans.
So he left her 3 by him graduating, yet there's an excess of 10 million that will come to her in this lifetime or in the lifetimes ahead, will pass generationally.
Yeah.
And that is a legacy. That is why he spent time with you guys as clients, relationally, individuals. He wanted you to have a legacy to leave your family. And he wanted to prove you could do it. And he's done it. He's proven you can do it. This is absolutely possible. What he established is still working and growing. And so those are things you guys, the only way to be able to leave that legacy is to be active. Actively using your banking system, actively moving from stage 1 to 2 to 3. You have to get to 3 and 4 in my viewpoint, and really 4, to leave a quality legacy for your family.
You got to get rid of this complacency. People are so complacent. You have to learn to have fun. That's what I'm trying to bring up. People get complacent with money because they don't like dealing with it. I'm just saying, have fun with it. I think this IBC thing is fun. Ray thought it was so fun. That's why he loved the lending business, because he just thought it was fun. We have a lot of listeners who are passionate about real estate, so they may not own a lending company, but they'll own a real estate investing company that can all be financed from policies. So then whenever you pass away, you leave this gigantic real estate pool, just like he left a big lending pool. That was his asset of choice. And so you can leave a big real estate pool if you wanted to, and then the death benefit on top of that is going to be passed down to the next generation, and hopefully they'll use that death benefit to continue and grow the legacy that you have, that you've left. And that's the other thing I wanted to mention too, Holly. We're just talking about his life. As he would always say, the big quote unquote death benefit is actually technically on his wife, not on his wife's life, not his. Because those were all the big policies he bought when actually practicing IBC were mostly on his wife, Amy. And you're just sitting here thinking, oh my gosh, only time will tell what he did. And of course, someone like Ray probably could have done it without IBC, but I'm saying IBC was the driver behind this. If it wasn't it was the system that allowed him to think about doing these things. I've been on a roll lately, and I'm still talking about it. If you don't learn to think what IBC wants you to think, then you won't actually receive the true benefit of IBC. You may have a life insurance policy. It has some value. You may use it for things. The infinite banking, what it did to Ray was it completely changed his identity. It changed his perspective on money. And that's what freed him to open up to, starting new businesses, investing in the things he did. And this is what we try to get across. Infinite banking is more than life insurance policies. It is a way of life. It is how you operate. When you adopt this, not as a commodity, not as a transaction, but as a system that you want to be good at, a banking business, it starts to change your perspective on the future. And Ray was a living testament of that more than anyone. I don't think there has been anyone in the world of infinite banking, even I would say Ray was probably better at than even Nelson Nash. I mean, I think Ray was the best banker that's ever lived. And do I think every decision he made, he would be the first to say no, it wasn't, not every decision I made was great. But because he was willing to do things, he learned more from the bad decisions than the good ones. He's mentioned some on this show, by the way, and you can go back to previous episodes, and we've had him on as a guest, and he would say things. We asked him, what did you learn? And he would tell us about the things in the early 2000s he was doing that was just kind of dumb. But he was figuring out this system. He was figuring it out. Now we can tell you what we know works. We don't have to, start from scratch. Is that about it, Holly?
I'm just going to say.
Any last words?
Just live your life with no regrets. I know that he graduated from this earth with absolutely no regrets. Yeah. And I think that that's how you have to approach it. You have to have no regrets, and you have to keep moving forward. You have to
keep growing.
Keep moving.
Don't be complacent. Yep. Keep learning. Keep trying new things. Never retire. Yeah. Think generationally. Be generous. That's Ray.
Yep. There you
That's
go.
Ray in a nutshell. That's what we are stewarding this message. The brand of Living Wealth is all built around that foundation that Ray left, and we carry it forward, and we are blessed. Anyway, Holly, we'll call it a day right there. This has been Dollars and Nonsense. If you follow the herd, you will be slaughtered.
For free transcripts and resources, please visit livingwealth.com/E181.
One last thing before we go. Start your journey towards financial security and wealth today. Visit livingwealth.com/bank on yourself. Upon completing the course, you'll have all the information you'll need to see if infinite banking is right for you. Again, go to livingwealth.com/bank on yourself.